Browns rookies get numbers. Veterans shuffle around. We'll talk about it. Rookie minicamp just around the corner now on the React. What is going on? Welcome into the OBR streaming network. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always splendid Pete Smith. This is the React. Good to see you here. Filing into the chat. Hit like and subscribe and the notification bell so you know every time we go live over at the streaming network, where you can find us on YouTube and Twitch. And we appreciate you hanging out with us 5 nights a week. What's going on, Pete?
Not too much. We have draft picks. We have numbers. And this week we will have minicamp.
Beautiful thing. They'll be out on the grass, get the rookies out there. And all this fun, quarterback dueling will begin. And about how many guys they bring in from rookie minicamp?
It's hard to say. Probably about two to 3 dozen overall between the draft class, the guys that they've agreed to sign to deals, which will become official when they can do physicals and all that, and then however many tryout guys they have. So and then the other potential one you don't know about is how many second-year guys are going to go back. For example, like Zach, I could totally see Zach Zinter at minicamp as one example, but there could be a couple other guys in that group too. So some of it comes down to what do they want to accomplish, how many people do they need to necessarily get it done, and then just logistics at that point. Like I know we've seen I mean, they're obviously going to have the 2 quarterbacks, but we've seen situations where, back when Bill Callahan was the offensive line coach, he was just yelling at one guy, endlessly. So it really just depends on what you're trying to do.
What's the rule about second-year guys coming back? Is there any rules in regards to like who can be at rookie minicamp?
I don't think so. I think it's really about the team and then the individual player.
Interesting. Well, we got some news from the Browns today as numbers have been assigned to the rookies and some veterans have switched up their number game. So let's take a look here at the rookie numbers first. So we get Mason Graham with 94, which if you saw the video, there's a video out of him actually choosing that one where he says he's going to try to get Pochich to come off of his number. I guess that didn't go so well. Schwessinger is what? That's his college number, right? 49.
Yep, his college number. Graham flirted with the idea of perhaps coming to a purchasing agreement with Ethan Posick for 55.
Yeah.
Judkins wanted 1. That isn't available. I can't remember what the other one he requested was. It might have been 5.
Yeah, that's why it was weird that wouldn't he get priority being drafted ahead of Gabriel?
He would not.
Okay.
The equipment guy even said they give priority to quarterbacks for single digit and that stuff. So Gabriel got first pick, and obviously Gabriel had different numbers in college. Most recently 8, which Kenny Pickett took. Dillon Sampson's in the most awkward position, I suppose, of anyone, because his numbers in college were 24 and then 6. So he's kind of screwed either way as far as the Browns go.
Yeah.
He's either looking at Nick Chubb's number or JOK. And then Harold Fannin, obviously 0 currently belongs to Greg Newsome. He requested 88 or 44. 88's a great number.
Yeah.
And then Sheduer Sanders gets 12, and there are people going, well, he didn't choose to. He never got a chance. The kick returner / punt returner DeAndre Carter got 2, so Shedeur was sort of relegated to then choose something else and went with 12. Of these, I should note that all these are temporary.
Yeah,
they aren't. And Mason is a perfect example. If he's able to finagle 55 from Posick, he probably will. Though I think 94 is a good number. 49 is sketchy, but given Schwesinger's sort of path to the NFL, I get it. Walk on to sort of figure it out and earn it. 10 is awful for a running back. That looks awful. I hate Judkins. I'm now worried he's going to be a complete and utter bust over that number. I'm hoping he's able to change that. And then I'm going to assume that Sheduer is eventually going to get 2. It's just a matter of time before that happens. And I don't know what Dillon Sampson's going to end up with, but between changes on the roster, between cuts, between potential trades, people get really psyched up about this stuff, and it's fine. It's great because now you finally get your guys in your uniform. So I totally get it, but some of these guys may switch before all is said and done.
I was trying to think of guys that wore 10 at running back, and the only guy I can think of is Isaiah Pacheco.
Yep, that's it. I mean, most of the guys are either obviously famous quarterbacks like Frank Tarkenton, and then you get, the new age sort of DeAndre Hopkins, and then Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp, but they're all receivers. It's just a very, because, and the reason I think receivers is because a sleek number, which is sort of goes against what Judkins is as a running back. Judkins is obviously 220 pounds and sort of a powerhouse back. So, if he's not going to get a single digit, and I think he eventually will, some form or fashion, then you'd like to see him in the 20s or the 30s.
Hopefully, Gabriel will get Pickett's, and then they can give 5 to Judkins. That'd be ideal.
Well, I mean, that's going to be the whole thing. Who's going to end up winning the job? If you're asking me right this second, he's got to actually go out and win it. But I think Kenny Pickett's going to get every opportunity to win that job.
I like 22 for Sampson, though. He should keep that one. That's a good number.
It's not bad. I think it works. But I'm honestly surprised he didn't end up at a single digit, and who knows, he may end up with that too, given his style of play.
All right, so let's look at what the veterans did, and they kind of screwed over the rookies, really, because these numbers were available for a moment, but we get some changes here. The biggest change is Emerson going from 23, which I get 1 is a cool number, right? But 23 was how he was identified, I guess. He was easy to identify in that 23. I don't know if I would change it to 1, but him going to 1 kind of set all this back. Then you get Carter with 2. Does he make the team? I don't know. You think he makes the team?
I do. I just don't think he's going to keep that number because he's a businessman, I'm assuming, and then pick that number knowing full well that he's going to be able to get a deal for it. Emerson, I like 23 personally on him. Me too. The whole MJ thing. I get the appeal for 1. To me, I think it's more of a college thing in the NFL, so it's whatever. Yeah. Obviously, Juan Thornhill had it before, hence now it's open. For Emerson, who I think is going to spend most of training camp with Jim Schwartz's foot squarely in his ass, if this gets it, that much more focused and motivated to be the player he looked like he could be in training camp last year, great, because clearly that didn't happen in the regular season. He has it in him to be a very good player, and he just wasn't. So if he wants to put more pressure on himself, so be it. It just, you know what the potential cost is, because you play the most visible mistake position on the field. When a corner screws up, everybody in the stadium knows it. So that part is whatever. Jerome Baker gets his old high school and college number, which I thought, is fine. I was reminded that Zmizdid, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, exists.
Who is that?
He's the second kicker.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You got Nick Needham, the veteran corner they brought in, who's going to try to compete for slot. Deontay Johnson got his old, the number he's had, and we found out that his contract is the bare ass minimum.
Good.
Which I totally understand from a Browns point of view. There is a part of me that, because you're sitting here going, this is clearly a Deontay Johnson understanding that, I have to, be the best person, be the best professional player I can be to maintain my career. My only fear is Deontay Johnson may just decide at some point, screw it, it's the league minimum. I'm not showing up to work, and just walks off because there's so little money attached. I hope that's not the case, because at the dollar value it is, which is like barely $1 million, there is legitimate upside there. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if he's going to even make it to training camp, but it's at least interesting. So that's something. Malik Collins has had 96 before. Awesome number. I cannot wait to see him get on the field with the guys they brought in, with Mason Graham, with Mike Hall, with Juwan Briggs, with Shelby Harris, and that's just your defensive tackle room. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. Joe Tryon Shoyinka, the Browns signed an edge rusher out of the rookies, but didn't draft anyone. So there's a little bit more pressure on him to show up and be great, or to be able to contribute as a pure pass rusher. Very curious to see what he can do. And then Tevin Jenkins has had 74, had it with the Bears. Cornelius Lucas has been 71. I think he's been multiple numbers. And then was this Julian Aquara, not Romeo, or it's Julian Aquara, not his brother. Romeo Aquara, I think he's had that number basically his whole run. I'm not sure he's going to make the team, but we'll see.
Tryon Shoyinka was a single digit with Tampa, I believe.
I think he came into the league. Did he come into the league right when that rule got put in? So he was able to go right from his college number to the NFL. Yeah. I can't remember what it was. Was he like 5 or something?
Yeah, 8? Let me look. But yeah, that's him going from that to 90. I don't know if he'd be real happy about that. These guys can be sensitive about their number. What was he, 7? Something like that? Trying to look here.
What I would say to him is hopefully he has a hell of a lot more production than he had in a single-digit number, because it wasn't much.
I show 9. I show him in a 9.
Okay. Well, then, hopefully he does better. Hopefully the 0 adds sacks.
Yeah. Double up them sacks with that 0. So that's the number shakeup.
And they're not even done, because obviously if they sign all these rookies, they're going to have even more guys. Like I expect Aiden Huntington's going to show up in 45, and that type of stuff. You get those weird, however I can get on the team number guys. Yeah.
Weird numbers that are available now, like 23 would be a good number. They got to have a corner coming in, right? That would take that, I would think.
Could be Dom Jones, could be Lamarian, whatever. Lamarian James, I think his last name is.
Yeah.
Could be Donovan McMillan.
Yeah.
Safety.
Yeah, that would be a good one for him. I like him a lot, probably better than a lot of these other guys. But that's interesting. So, interesting stuff there. There's a tight end, Eli Wilson. He'll probably get like 84 or something like that. D'Artagnan. God, I love that name.
Awesome.
That's a real man's name right there, D'Artagnan. All right, so with this, football, they're going to get out on the grass here, rookie minicamp, and as we knew would happen when the Browns drafted Shedeur Sanders, the hype has followed. They are talked about almost every day on these shows, on the car wash, the ESPN and Fox car wash of shows. The Browns are talked about at length, what they're going to do at quarterback. People are still talking about Shedeur falling to the 5th round, calling it one of the weirdest drafts of all time and all this stuff like that, right? I did want to, before we're not going to watch the video on it, but just let's hit on it real quick before we dive into videos, our videos tonight. Devin Bush arrested. Not a lot of details surrounding it, not a lot of comments. You made an interesting comment to me off the air, though, about his money.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns signed him like a $3.5 million deal, and like all of it's guaranteed. So,
yeah,
your initial reaction is, given the nature of this, you could go ahead and cut him. It's the type of situation where no one would blink if they did, considering it potentially involves domestic violence. If the report is true and what has been written about is true, which is he allegedly pinned his girlfriend down or something and destroyed her phone or something along those lines, which resulted in the arrest he's near Pittsburgh, since that's where he was drafted, so that's where he was living. And no one would think twice about getting rid of him. However, if you do that, you can't then get the money back because of it. He'd actually have to be he would have to be sort of charged and ultimately either plead out or be convicted to sort of violate any potential, unless there's some specific stipulation that even would include an arrest. And I can't imagine it would, where he loses his bonus money.
Yeah.
Or that the league suspends him. Now, the league could do that at any point in time, but either way, like, again, if your reflex is go ahead and cut him, I completely get it. My only pushback would be I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, and it's simply because they want to figure out a way to not pay him $3.5 million. And you could cut him and say eat the money on principle, but like, I don't think they want to do that. Whatever you want to say about that part of it, they're going to want to be able to use that money for something else. And here's the thing, like, they signed him to this deal. And at the time, this was one of the many reasons I didn't think the Browns were going to be that proactive when it came to drafting a linebacker, taking Schlesinger as early as they did. But like, that draft pick makes the contract all the stranger. Not to say that Devin Bush wasn't going to contribute, but like, you drafted Schlesinger to play. Presumably, he's going to start. Obviously, he's got to go out and earn it, but you drafted him to be on the field with Jordan Hicks. So at that point, you are then paying Devin Bush what amounts to be $3.5 million to be a backup linebacker, and that's just not a position you want to pay much money to be a backup. So everything about this, from a why did the Browns make this deal in the first place concept, to then this deal looks really bad given the nature of the accusation. And look, it's possible that Devin Bush could be completely innocent, that this whole thing's been blown out of proportion, but given the nature of it, it's just, it's one of those things where your immediate reaction is it's icky. And as a result, especially when you're the Browns, and especially when you've been dealing with this crap with Deshaun Watson, and among other players, there is a point where you just sort of want to be able to say, we're not dealing with this, and we want to be able to move on.
Yeah, 100%. And then, they signed Jerome Baker too, and you get the draft pick. So,
right, and Jerome Baker, and his is the logical signing. Like, one of the sort of the strange elements, and you sort of see it by just how veteran numbers they're handing out. The Browns signed a lot of those guys. Deontay Johnson obviously has the biggest name, but Jerome Baker's got it. People know who Jerome Baker is too. These guys are signed for the absolute league minimum. These are great deals from the Browns standpoint, but it also, and obviously Jerome Baker is a Will, where Devin Bush is more suited to be a Mike. Right. But nevertheless, you sit here and you go, that the Baker and the Johnson deals make a ton of sense. And it's just another thing that points to why did they make the decision they did with Devin Bush.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you've got Diabate there too, who you like, and so
I like him. And then they've got Buki Watson, who did absolutely nothing for me last year.
Yeah, who's the bigger of all of them, right? If you needed a Sam on the field or whatever. So that's interesting. All in the linebacker room there, even makes their investment in Winston Reed a little bit even more intriguing because. I mean, he did kind of flash at the end of the year. No. Yeah. I mean, look, they play a certain, Winston Reed plays a very specific style. He's an old, Winston Reed is out of the 70s and 80s style of Mike linebacker. He's A gap to almost other A gap, right downhill, putting his face mask in another guy's chest type guy. Devin Bush, obviously with the knee injury, isn't the same player as he was, but he's got speed. And then, you get to a guy like Schlesinger, and he's a different breed in that he's so much more athletic. In addition to being big, as I sort of noted my review for him, and I groaned as I realized this was what was going to happen. Watching him on tape is I immediately go, oh crap, this is his guy to run inverse 2. Because this dude can turn and run backwards and cover the back. He can make that drop effortlessly. So even more inverse 2 than they were running before because they've got a guy to do it. Unfortunately, that's for sure. All right. Let's get into this. Rich Eisen is who we're going to go to first. He's talking about Shedeur and the Browns, but also, since we just covered the numbers, it seemed right to go to here next because he brings up the significance of Shedeur potentially wearing 12 if he ever does.
Still, it's just the weirdest draft I've ever seen, and that again involves Laramie Tunsil having a Pineapple Express gas mask on and getting hosed by somebody who put a bunch of DMs out there. But that lasted one day. Honestly, we had the page turned in that Chicago draft the next day.
Yeah.
Because that was just a night one situation. And Shedeur Sanders' draft lasted 3 days. Unreal. And left him in a spot for a team that had 6 shots at drafting him. It didn't. Had a 5th round pick at taking him. Didn't, then use their last pick to move up in the 5th round to end their draft by taking him. And one of the shots that they had to take him, they drafted Dillon Gabriel instead. So, I mean, you're hearing hey, the Browns were trying to move up to the 4th round to take him. Oh, really? Because you had a 5th round pick you didn't use on him. So you clearly couldn't have moved up into the 4th. Well, the value was so great. You didn't take him the first shot you had to take him in the round you actually took him. Nuts.
It's weird.
But as you know, that's just hopefully for Shedeur and the Browns a footnote. Unless Dillon Gabriel's the guy. Unless Kenny Pickett is the guy. Because Joe Flacco, as we all know, is not the guy for the Browns long term. Because he's long in the tooth. But now that their numbers have been assigned, it's officially a competition. That's the first step. You're drafted, then you choose your number. And Shedeur has chosen Tom Brady's number.
Oh, look at that. Or he was assigned that number.
I don't know.
Why wouldn't he take 2?
Because 2 has already been assigned. And the last thing you're going to do when you show up to a spot like this is say, I want a certain number. And that number's already taken in the wide receiver room, I might add. And Shedeur's got 12. Dillon Gabriel's got 5. Pickett has 8, I believe. And Joe's keeping 15. He's getting it back. And it's amazing. The guy who isn't the answer long term is 100% the guy that's going to be on the roster out of these 4. Hey, folks, Flacco's making this team unless he is completely fallen apart at the seams. Because he's a guy that Kevin Stefanski can look at and say, you don't need the reps. I'm sure.
You disagree, Pete. I heard you make the noise, and you've commented on this before, so elaborate.
My whole thing with the Browns quarterback situation, they aren't married to anybody. They have given themselves complete and total freedom. I will maintain their best case scenario is that they are in a world where they cut Joe Flacco. And that's not because they don't like Joe Flacco. And that's not because Joe Flacco's arm fell off. It's because Kenny Pickett, Dillon Gabriel, and Sheduer Sanders showed enough that said, these are the 3 quarterbacks you should keep. Do I think that's necessarily a likely scenario? Not really. But it's not even a question. If you could come out of training camp and go, we feel good about 3 20-something-year-old quarterbacks, that's easy. It's easy. That'd be the easiest decision for them to make. I'm not convinced at all that Joe Flacco's a guarantee on this team. Even if it's still likely that he will, I still see real value in Joe Flacco making this team. And I've sort of, he's gotten himself in trouble. He had recently talked about this and talked about himself getting in trouble on the topic of being a mentor. I think there's real value and Joe Flacco does not need to sit there and put his arm around these guys and go, listen, fellas, this is how you need to do it. But what he can do is just be Joe Flacco. He has been in the league for 35 years. He has played in 3,453 games. It is a testament to him that he's been able to sustain in the league that long. That doesn't happen by accident. He has worked really hard to be able to, in terms of keeping his body right, doing what he needs to do in terms of work habits and studying, all those things, where as long as he's not saying, get out of my face, kid, don't be near me while I work, and he's just like okay with like them being around and sort of noting how he worked, I think there's immense value in that, because every single one of those guys who's going to be in that room with him is sitting there going, this is my dream scenario that I'm able to, by my choice, be able to be in the NFL as long as Joe Flacco has been. So I do think there's real value in that. But unquestionably, short of an injury situation, the absolute best situation for the Browns is they come out of this thing and they go, Kenny, we traded a 5th-round pick and DTR for Kenny Pickett because we thought there was more in there, and he proved us absolutely right. And maybe he's not going to be a frontline starter, but he's more than good enough. And we drafted 2 rookie quarterbacks, and man, like we drafted the two of the most experienced quarterbacks in the draft, guys that fit our system really well. And we feel like they fit great, and we want to keep these guys. That's an awesome situation for them to run into.
Do you remember the preseason of Kenny Pickett? The year that there was all this noise coming out of Pittsburgh, and maybe a second year, right? I think about how
I know where you're going.
About how great he was in practice.
158.3 QB rating in the preseason. Let's go. MVP. Andrew Filippone. MVP. There's no quarterback I'd rather have in the entire league than one Kenneth Rutherford Pickett.
Rutherford.
I don't know if that's his real nickname. It's just an easy go-to. But
it sounded good.
It's all Filippone. Yes, I 1,000% remember this. So,
what if that happened? What if he looks great? What if he looks fantastic in practice? Great practice quarterback, great in the preseason, and dog shit in the real when the real thing comes around.
Well, the one thing that I like about how the Browns are doing this, and particularly because they have 3 young quarterbacks, is they are scheduled to have 2 sets of joint practices.
Yeah.
And that's not, I can get my whole spiel about what preseason should be for. Those joint practices are legit. Like that is proving something against real competition. And the Browns defense has traditionally done really well in those things.
Yeah.
Their offense has not. So that's been pretty indicative of where they've been as a team the last few years. So I think those practices are going to be very helpful, and maybe the reason the Browns wanted two sets.
Yeah, that's a good point.
To really feel good about not just and that, certainly the quarterback room is where we're focused on, but I think it goes beyond that. I think that feeds into what Kevin Stefanski, and I don't know if you saw the video or not, or anyone else has. They released a video of him, sort of his initial talk when they came back, and he's talking about earned toughness, and that whole thing, and how they're going to work hard and all that stuff. I have every reason to believe that the two sets of joint practices are part of that. I'm hoping, and I sort of railed on this last year, and obviously with the caveat that, look, I don't think they were able to practice the way they wanted to. There are reasons for that. The offensive line situation was a complete mess, some of which was not in their control with the amount of injuries they had. They don't have those this year. And people are going to do the thing where they go, oh, we should see it in preseason. Absolutely not. You get it done in practice. These joint practices should be hard. Practice should be hard. Preseason, and we'll see if the Browns agree with me. At some point I'll be up there, and Kevin can talk to me, and we can go over things. Preseason should be for those young guys. Just get your young guys out there and get them reps. Don't waste that on veterans. Don't waste that on guys for fake football. And you can tell me about it's the bright lights and all this other crap. It's not real. And it just doesn't do anything. You should be able to get that work done in practice, because a lot of the best teams in the NFL, and the team I will immediately go to is the Los Angeles Rams. They practice really hard. They get their work done in practice, and they don't do anything in preseason other than play young guys. And they are consistently a prepared football team, even when they've had an extraordinarily young group of football players on their team. They figure it out. You're not wasting injuries, and you can sit there and you can point. You can tell me about Mike Tomlin, and I'm going to ask you how many playoff games he's winning lately. You can point at the Chiefs, and I'm going to sit there and go, yeah, they got Pat Mahomes, and they play really good defense. But I don't think that's a tribute to them playing in the preseason. And they played Hollywood Brown in the preseason last year and lost him for half the year.
Yeah.
Get that stuff. I'm hoping this group has incredibly difficult practice, and I don't mean like consistently going to the ground and getting guys hurt.
No.
But I have often criticized NFL practices. They're slow. The pace is just not very good. I think they can get a lot more done in a traditional NFL practice than college or high school, where you can see teams flying around on the practice field to get stuff done. I'm hoping that is more the mentality the Browns have this year. And again, they've got to be smart. They've got to be in a way that's going to, not just get guys hurt to get guys hurt, but they got to get themselves ready for the season in a way that's going to, given the way they drafted this team, it to me sent a message of who they are trying to be again. You take Mason Graham, you follow that up with Schlesinger, seemingly you follow that up with Judkins. You take another running back in Dillon Sampson, who I love that pick. To me, you're sending a message that you want to be a way more physical football team. That starts with how you practice.
Yeah, and last year was just like, it just felt like and to your point, it was out of their control, a large part of it, but the situation with the tackles and the quarterback.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's unproductive.
It turned into like a country club, kind of like. I mean, it just that's what the feeling it kind of had around it is very. It just didn't feel very productive ever.
Well, what you end up with you start to get in this mindset of you feel like you're walking on eggshells because
Yes.
you can't. You're one having to practice around all these guys who are injured, and then you get in your head, I can't afford to lose anybody else at this point.
Exactly.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that you just are able to do less and less and less. And we saw what happened. And obviously there are more elements to it than that, but still, I think I'm hoping that that's what this whole earned toughness is about. I'm hoping that this is Kevin Stefanski sort of sending the message very early that they're going to be a more physical football team, a more physical practice team, and set a tone. Because listen, we're getting questions on the forums and ATI and all this stuff about, are the Browns tanking the season? And then Yahoo's got them at 4.5 games, 4.5 wins for the season. If they're going to, get back to being a more competitive football team, that's where it has to start. Unless one of these quarterbacks is going to be great right out of the gate or be really, really impressive in a way that we don't expect, they're going to have to be a physically dominant football team where they can dictate both sides of the ball. They can wear on people. Teams play the Browns and then they're still feeling it the next week. I don't know if they can get there, but at least I'm under the assumption that is the way they're looking at this.
Yeah, Pete, FanDuel has them as the absolute worst odds to win the Super Bowl in the entire NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really argue with the idea that they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I don't think they're the worst team in the league.
Yeah, they shouldn't be last though.
But here's the thing: no one, very few people go broke betting against the Browns historically. Unfortunately, that's where they are at. That is the reputation they have.
Yeah.
Yes, they went to the playoffs in 2020, got to the second round. Yes, they went to the playoffs in 2023 in historic fashion and did all these great things. But year to year, if you're betting against the Browns, even in Kevin Stefanski, maybe he's a little bit of an outlier. I mean, obviously he's the best one they've had, but by and large, you're still making money, and they have to figure out a way to get past that, and they have to sort of prove that. And so we'll see where they end up with. I'm hoping Jacksonville is like right there with them in the odds because. If they're going to be bad, hopefully while getting a whole lot better, I hope Jacksonville's just a little bit worse.
Yeah, currently Jacksonville has the 9th worst odds to win the Super Bowl. So it's not bad. Anywhere in that bottom 10 would be just fine, I think. So
indeed.
All right, next video here. You're watching the React on the OBR streaming network. I'm Brad Ward. That's Pete Smith. This is from First Take. You're going to get a couple of opinions here on the Browns' situation at quarterback as they prepare for camp and how they're going to divvy up some of these snaps and whatnot here.
Will Shedeur be the Browns starter week 1?
Yes, he's the most talented quarterback in that room. Look, I had him at the bottom of the first, top of the second. Ironically, I compared him to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins had a great career in Minnesota with offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski, now the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Whatever happened in the draft to me is ancient history. Shedeur Sanders on Saturday night should have been calling the skill players of the Cleveland Browns saying, hey, here I come, and start developing a relationship. If I'm the Browns, I either keep Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett as my veteran guy. I took Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round, who's a nice player, not a lot of upside, but I really need to know what I have in Shedeur Sanders because next year I have 2 first-round picks. And if I can win with Shedeur, I can get a massive haul for those picks, given all those other quarterbacks that are available. So if I'm Shedeur, whatever happened, lessons learned, and just move forward. And when you look at the skill players that they have, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, they added Harold Fannin, 2 good running backs, Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. You look at some of these other guys that have done well, be it Jaden Daniels last year, C.J. Stroud 2 years ago. I think Shedeur is set up for success in Cleveland.
I think you're wrong, Mike T. I think you're wrong, and I think somebody like you will understand and appreciate where I'm coming from when I say this. I don't think the day one starter or the week one starter for the NFL season for the Cleveland Browns, as it pertains to Shedeur Sanders specifically, is going to be determined by just his play. I think all the stuff that has been said, all the stuff that has been reported is erroneous as it may be in the eyes of a lot of people, including myself, as cruel as it might be in the eyes of people like myself in terms of what happened to him. I think that you had people looking to give him a reality check. And now I think what you're going to do is see people wanting to test his emotional and mental resolve as it pertains to that. As of yesterday afternoon, he was en route to Cleveland, from what I was told, in a pickup truck, ready to put on his lunch, grab his lunch pail, put on his hard hat, and get to work. That's what I was told in terms of yesterday about how he's looking at things right now, anxious to go out there and show out. But you're hearing people out of Cleveland talk, Dom, about how Dillon Gabriel was their preferred quarterback, Big Ten Player of the Year, that kind of thing. They were saying that they looked at him. I don't know how, because he wasn't Shedeur Sanders, but nevertheless, they were looking at it. You look at Flacco, he's a fan favorite. They loved him in Cleveland. They never wanted him to leave after the job he did for them a couple of years ago when Deshaun Watson went down, and he came in and did his thing, okay? And then you're looking at Kenny Pickett. Now, I know that Kenny Pickett is a former Steeler. Then he went to Philadelphia. He's got a Super Bowl championship as a backup. We get all of that part. But in his last 17 starts, his record is like 13-4. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, I think they look at Shedeur as a long-term solution. I'm not saying he's going to sit out the year or anything like that. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's the starter at some point this upcoming season, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to be judged by just his play. I think they're going to want to see whether or not that ego that people were talking about is something that they're going to have to concern themselves with. And unfortunately, I think they're going to test them. And that's why I think he's going to be prevented from starting week one. Not because he won't deserve it. I just think they're going to test him. Go ahead.
All right. The problem there is the problem with Stephen A's take is they don't have time for that.
I agree. They don't. If he's good enough, he'll play. Now, since this video has been released, we've learned a whole lot about what actually happened. Shedeur, and we sort of, I've talked about this before, made a huge mistake not hiring an agent.
Yeah.
So he never prepped for his, what it meant to be job interviews. He is entering the highest stakes profession of anyone. One of the high stakes professions. He worked his butt off all the way up until Colorado's season ended, and then he just completely stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Got terrible advice from those around him. I've said multiple times, the adults around him failed him miserably.
Yeah.
So everybody else is, you would sort of look at this as sort of like the people who, the parents who hire tutors and everything to, help their kid take the ACT, SAT, whatever,
exactly,
to try to achieve to get the best, to get in the best college and all this other stuff. That is essentially what the NFL is. All these players are doing everything possible to sort of give themselves every possible advantage to help themselves with the job interview process, say the right things, polish themselves up, present themselves in a way that teams are going to like, in addition to the training and everything with the athletic testing and all that stuff. And he didn't do any of it. I mean, he worked out. I mean, he prepared like a football player, but he didn't do it. And then he goes to these job interviews, and obviously we've learned some details like with the Giants, and he was presented with situations that they present all their quarterbacks. He got it wrong in terms of what Joe Shane gave him sort of gives these guys like a group of a list of plays, and then intentionally has something wrong with one of them.
And they have to identify.
Shedeur didn't catch it.
Yeah.
When he was called on it, didn't take it well. apparently was combative in that element. And then, allegedly in another team's interview, was challenged in some interception he threw, and then basically told the team, I guess you're not the one for me.
Yeah, maybe you're not the guy for you. Yeah.
You are telling one of the 32 people who can hire you not to hire you. So if you add these things up, you start eliminating the possibility of these teams drafting you. And the reason he was doing this is because, in part, the people around him had no sense of self-awareness that he was not a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
And if he had the talent of Cam Ward, he probably still goes in the top 5. But Cam Ward, by all counts, annihilated the draft process, was fantastic, was everything people wanted him to be from a person. Obviously, that's not just the job interview part. That is also who he's been at these 3 different programs and the work ethic and stuff. So Shedeur Sanders has earned a lot of praise for being sort of this overachiever and hard worker. And in this situation, he became the entitled, spoiled brat that a label he's sort of been fighting the entire time he's been in the spotlight. And then when he got to the place that he needed not to be the most, it came through and obviously rubbed people the wrong way. So I disagree completely with Stephen A, not because I think if Shedeur is good enough, they're going to put him on the field because they don't have time to waste. Kevin Stefanski is nothing about Kevin Stefanski strikes me as I'm going to play some mental game with a player and not put him on the field because I'm sending him a message. 32 teams sent him a message in 5 rounds of the draft. If the message isn't clear now,
it never will be.
He's going to get cut. He's going to end up out of the league. He's going to be in the UFL or CFL at that point. That part is over. At this point, he's going to get here. And I think, it started with the phone call at the draft. I think the Browns' immediate approach is not beating him down further. It's going to be building him back up. Now, obviously, there's accountability and he's got to do the things he's got to do. But I don't think they're going to sit here and go, take this kid they just drafted the 5th round and go, oh, you thought it was hard before? It's going to be even worse now. And basically say, by the way, you're 5th on the depth chart. We're putting a random wide receiver ahead of you just so you know where you sit. I think what Stephen A is portraying is like TV. It's TV stuff you write in a script for a football movie, not what the Browns are going to do as an organization. They don't have time for it, as you pointed out. If he can play, they've got to find out real fast. So I don't buy that for a minute. And I'm hoping that, from his standpoint, that he gets back to being the grinder and overachiever, because I do think he can bring a whole lot of positive. And if he's good, if he can prove everybody wrong and he's 3 rounds better than where he was drafted, which is just where I put him, forget the people who thought he should go 2nd overall, then, he will have earned, the ability to do the wrist celebration that people are misattributing to everyone else who has a wrist, including the Cleveland Guardians, notably players who've probably never heard of Shedeur Sanders, like Jose Ramirez. Maybe he has, I don't know. But
hard to believe, yeah.
We went through this with the whole Baker Mayfield thing, and Baker Mayfield, needing to be himself admitting he had to sort of grow up and needing to go through what he went through. You are, if you're the Browns, you are hoping that Shedeur, that he's through that this is that for him. That now he's going to come out on the other side and be the grown up that you need him to be, and then the talent can shine through, and all the positive things he can bring to the table will be good. Because if he does, and he can be a starting quarterback for your team, then the Browns are going to be sitting there with 2 first-round picks and the ability to just build around him. So it's the opportunity is there for him. I don't buy any of the other crap, and I don't know what Mike Tannenbaum said after that crap, or after his sort of spiel or what he was thinking. But I imagine what he was thinking in his head is, this is absolute nonsense, and if he can play, we're going to put him out there because we need to win football games. And especially, you and I have talked about, maybe ownership's perfectly content with potentially playing for a quarterback. That locker room is not. They don't have time to waste.
No.
They're going to lose. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are going to lose credibility with that locker room if they just sort of are terrible this year. If Shedeur Sanders can help them win football games, they're absolutely going to take advantage.
Yeah, which is ultimately kind of that point about the veteran impact on the locker room is kind of why I think that Flacco may be there in the beginning. I don't know. He brings some. If he gives you your best chance to win, you almost owe it to the veterans to have him be there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Now, let me be clear. Like, when I say the best case scenario is those three young quarterbacks make the job, they have to be able to deliver.
Yeah.
Because you can't cut Joe Flacco and then everybody, and obviously there's some, if you cut him and you're not good, it'd be fair to question if they'd be that much better with Joe Flacco, but you can't, for the sake of the locker room, you can't cut him and it become painfully clear that you are a worse football team for it. They absolutely cannot do that.
Yeah, they sold the players and everybody around the organization that for 9 games last year, and they kind of had to. I mean, they didn't have to, but they did. They can't afford to do that anymore.
No, and I think whether they do it in the form of actually telling them that, and being open about the fact that they can't do that anymore, their actions have to speak it.
Yeah. I heard an interesting take on the whole interview thing from I guess he's a member of Shedeur's camp or whatever. But he was talking about like kind of he might have been referring to the Giants or whoever it was, but he talked about how it was weird for Shedeur where you would have like these GMs and guys coming up to you and like spending a lot of time with you at other less formal or wherever they were meeting at, whether it be the Shrine game, right, where he did some interviews in other places. And it was kind of like, you're our guy. We like you, and joking around and palling around, to a more formal setting all of a sudden where he's being like, it's, they went from like, you're our guy to, and he like wasn't ready for it or misinterpreted like the relationship. You know what I mean? Like going in the room, like, oh, I know these guys, I've spent time with these guys before. And then as he goes in, it's a job interview and not the same, relationship that they had prior or the same tone that they had prior with them, which he should have been prepared for. But you see you could see how that might fool a young man.
I guess, but of all the players in this draft,
he should be the
most
have
a sense that all of this stuff is business.
Yeah,
it's him. His dad walked into that university and said, "I'm cutting like flat out. I'm getting rid of all of you.
Yeah,
They sent the message early and you go, hey, this is the starting quarterback. We've got this sorted out, and the rest of you basically get out. We're replacing you. Like, you've been a business since you've been in college. Like, his whole football career has been monetized. He's been on national ad campaigns. Like, you can make the case that, again, there's some level of naivete there, but like, again, where is Dillon in this? Like, you failed miserably at this.
Yeah.
You thought he was you.
Yeah.
Where you could handle the process exactly how you wanted, and it would go how you wanted it to, because that's how it worked out for you. Dillon let's be clear, Dillon was an asshole in his draft process. Like, but he was so good, nobody cared.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. Talent equates to tolerance. Dillon went to combine meetings and told me, where are you picking? You're not picking high enough. I'm not meeting with you and all this other stuff. And he could back it up. Your kid won 13 games. You retired his number.
Yeah.
I mean,
Totally fair.
there's an element of like the lack of self-awareness on Deion's part for somebody who should be extraordinarily savvy in these matters is galling. And this is something I've pointed out with Deion for years.
Yeah.
He's one of the most self-serving athletes on the planet, and it serves him very well. He's been a Hall of Fame player. He was able to play 2 sports at a pretty damn high level. He was able to take that and take that into a broadcasting career. He's been able to do all these things with his life, and it's worked out for him. But he has done a lot of things, whether it's been trying to open a school in Texas or his own training academy, where he comes out okay, but real damage was done to other people.
Sure.
And it never seems to fall back on him. And this, I don't know if this will, because in the immediacy of it when it was happening during the draft, Deion actually had the audacity to say, they're not drafting my son because they don't like me.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't see the lack of the amount of delusion that comes from that, that's preposterous. Like, that's an insane amount of delusion at that point, that you actually think the NFL cares that much about sticking it to you that they're not going to take your kid. They took Travis Hunter 2nd overall, but they're sticking it to you on Shedeur. It doesn't work that way. And we'll see. I hope for Deion's sake and any other kid that's going to go there with a chance to go to the NFL, that this wakes him up in a way that he's going to be a huge benefit to players coming out of his program in terms of what it takes, what you need to prepare, getting a good agent, all that stuff that's going to put you in the best position to succeed. Because I think part of what Deion took, one, his ego, I said this at the time, his ego could not take Shedeur not going as early as he thought he would, which is why we saw him basically dispatch Louis Riddick to say absolutely stupid things. And I don't know, maybe there was a segment of the draft where Louis Riddick just put a Browns helmet down next to him and he just had his foot in his mouth. He was just chomping on it for 15 minutes. Maybe that happened, and I don't know, given how badly he was misinformed on both Myles Garrett and then this situation where he trashed the Browns and the Browns draft Sheduer Sanders. But beyond the whole ego element that Deion couldn't take, I think he took this as like a shot at his program. Yeah. Like at no point, I don't doubt for one moment that Deion loves his kids, is a very good father in most things. But there came a point where it felt like he stopped being Shedeur's father and was just entire and like made himself into just Colorado's football coach and being Deion. And like he took this whole thing as this was going to hurt his program and him. And it wasn't until you saw the phone call where I thought Deion the father came out in some level self-serving in its own right, him going on the phone, and saying thank you. But it did feel like in that moment I finally saw the loving, supportive father I know he is, that the rest of this element with him just doesn't allow him to be in a way that I think hurt Shedeur. And even before this whole draft thing came out, my plea to all of these people was let Shedeur do it. Let him do it. Yeah. And I don't think that it was ever allowed to happen, because if it was, I think Shedeur would have had an agent. I think Shedeur would have been way more prepared for these things. And Shedeur goes multiple rounds earlier than he otherwise would have. And I'd be very curious to know, this is the ultimate what if. What if his draft process was handled professionally? What if it was handled well? Are we talking about is Shedeur the 33rd or 36th pick of the draft? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And maybe in the way it worked out could be a huge benefit to the Browns. The one other tangent I will go off on this is this element. The amount of people who said the Browns have to take a quarterback at 2 and then 33. And it was always Shedeur. They have to take a quarterback. They have to take a quarterback. They have to take a quarterback if they want to be serious and all this other stuff. And now I'm seeing many of the same pundits who said the Browns had to take, not all, like the check the mic guys. I will give them all the credit in the world because they're singing the Browns' praises, saying that you have to take a quarterback early because you got to take a shot. You got to figure this out. But then they are simultaneously praising the Browns for taking both Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round and then Sheduer in the 5th round because you got a guy potentially 3 rounds later and that value in that, and then just the whole take as many swings as you can. I'm also seeing people who said you have to take a quarterback at 2, you have to take Sheduer at 2 or 33 or whatever, and they're now saying, I'm seeing people say, well, the Browns are wasting a season.
Yeah.
What? They have the same player. Shedeur's still here. Like, what happened? If I told you before the draft the Browns came out with Sheduer Sanders, would you have immediately go, oh, the Browns are wasting the season because you found out he went 144th overall? That's a you problem.
Instead
That's not
of
a them
2,
problem.
yeah.
You evaluated this guy to being worth, even if you thought he was a 2nd round pick and you're saying the Browns have to force the pick because of the position, they got the guy you told them they have to get, and now you're saying it's going to be a wasted season. What does that say about what you were saying before? Like, you pick a lane here.
Yep. Yeah, like the lens changes so much from the guy you thought you were getting at 2 to the guy that after 3 days goes at 144. It's just wild
crazy
swings.
And I don't doubt there's a real and here again, I don't want to say wasted season because the Browns could be bad and get a whole lot better this year. If they waste the season, then Kevin Stefanski and Adrian Berger in the world are hurt. But they could be bad, not playoff team and get a whole lot better. But that concept of, well, they did exactly what I said they had to do, but it didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out. So now they're going to still suck is, mind blowing to me. They did it.
Yeah.
They did exactly what you prescribed.
Yep. It's wild. It's wild. That draft swing is wild. All the pieces, parts, and everything around it. That how many adults in that camp can be there and misjudge this so wildly is hard to believe. But yeah. But now we root for the best for him. And we hope that he shows up and shows out. So it'll be interesting to see how things go from here. This is our next video here on the React is Albert Breer talking about both the Browns and the Giants quarterback room heading into rookie minicamp here.
Giants, and I'm tying these two together because I think both have very interesting situations at the quarterback position. Both have multiple veterans with starting experience on their rosters. The Giants have Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. The Browns have Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. And they're each introducing rookies into the mix at the quarterback position. The Giants are doing it with Jackson Dart. The Browns are doing it without a first-round pick in that mix, but with 2 pretty high-profile lower-round picks in Dillon Gabriel and, of course, Shedeur Sanders. So how do these play out? Well, I think through the spring, you give the veterans a chance to compete. I think it's tough to take reps away from veterans who are learning new receivers. Joe Flacco isn't learning a new system, but there are some changes. He'll have a new coordinator in Tommy Reese there. So they got to get to know each other. Kenny Pickett is new to Cleveland, new to the players there. Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are both new to Brian Daboll and both new to their teammates there. So those guys need the work in the spring. And so what do you do with the young guys? Well, you give them a chance to compete. And I think for those guys, what they do in the spring is going to be really important because by the time you get to the summer, you really want to kind of have an idea of who's legitimately in the competition to start in September. And so my feeling is for both teams, what you're going to see in the spring with Jackson Dart in New York, with Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland is like an opportunity for them to earn more reps. So you do good with this rep. Maybe you get 2 the next day. You do good with these 2. You get 3 the next day. That, of course, is just, those numbers aren't real, but like that's sort of the way it would work, is that you build it up. It's sort of the way, if you want to look back at it, Russell Wilson wound up winning the job as a lower round pick in Seattle all those years ago. Of course, now he's in New York on the other end of an equation like this. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, and Dillon Gabriel, all three of those guys were high reps players in college. All those guys were multi-year starters. Dillon Gabriel started games at Central Florida, at Oregon, or at Oklahoma, and then, of course, at Oregon. Shedeur Sanders started games at Jackson State and at Colorado, and Jackson Dart started games at USC and Ole Miss. So all those guys started games at multiple schools, had multiple years as entrenched starting quarterbacks, and should at least be, I think, ready to look competent on an NFL practice field. We'll see how that goes. Our third topic for today is...
All right, so that's interesting about what he says about the reps there, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So, like, how you manage, Flacco coming in with Tommy Rees, the new OC. He's familiar with Stefanski's, system, but you've got Rees there, and then you've got Pickett, who clearly needs work, right, to learn the offense as you get ready for a season. And then how do you, at the same time, include the rookies in this competition? Are there enough reps in a practice, in a training camp, in OTAs, to make this an open competition between four guys?
No, because it's not going to be an open competition between four guys. Joe Flacco doesn't need reps. The OC, I don't care if Tommy Rees is the OC. Joe Flacco is going to run what basically Joe Flacco ran when he was here the last time. And there's not a whole lot, if they run a different set of routes, he's going to know what to look for and that type of stuff. So I'm not worried about that. And granted, if the guys don't make enough progress, he's going to get more and more reps, because ultimately then he will actually be the starter. But especially early, I've said all along, I thought he benefited from coming in mid-season in 2023, because he didn't have to throw all that much. He was rested. It showed. I thought he was better for it. I think the Browns are going to take a similar tact in really trying to just keep him in shape, keep him strong, as opposed to necessarily trying to work him out a ton. So the way Breer sort of broke that down is really interesting, because I think what you could have happen, and because he talked about the fact that they are guys that had so many reps. He's right. But it also means that they know sort of what it takes in terms of work ethic. So I'm curious to see if the result is that Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees and Bill Musgrave come out and basically present them with the two rookies in particular, and basically say, listen, you're going to earn your reps. So when you're out there, you got to be perfect when you get the opportunity. You're not going to have time to, you're not going to get 5 plays to sort of figure it out and get into a rhythm. You're going to have to be perfect. And obviously that starts with the run game. That has to be perfect. Being able to line guys up has to be perfect. Being able to manage the cadence and work the huddle, that stuff has to be perfect. That could be a real net benefit if Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur internalize that element of it, and they say, listen, I have to, every time I get a snap, it's got to be dead on. I've got to know who's on the field. I've got to know where they've got to line up. I've got to know what we're doing on the play. I've got to be able to, if they're, I think for the Browns, most part, they want the center to call the protection. But if they had to call protection or check something or whatever, to be able to know what checks are available, to be able to put them in the right play, and then post snap, be able to execute. What's my read? Where do I have to go? And nail it. and the example he used of Russell Wilson is really interesting. One, because he's right. That is how Russell Wilson did. But also Russell Wilson, and you will probably make fun of him for this, because he looked like a big, tool bag in some ways, because, whether it was the Senior Bowl or practices with the Seahawks, he'd always be like 7 yards behind the huddle, and he'd mimic the play. He'd do it himself with nobody. He'd just go through it, because that helped him, hammer home those elements.
reps
Great.
on
I mean,
air.
it worked for him. Obviously, if he was on a Hall of Fame track for a significant portion of his career, if that is the standard that comes out of this for the Browns, that they have 4 quarterbacks who basically sit there, I got to be right all the time. Great.
Yeah.
And if you're Kenny Pickett, you already know that like you're running out of chances.
Yes.
So you already know what you have to do, and you had 2 years and weren't happy with how it went. So there's added sort of urgency to make yourself right. So if it works out in a situation where these guys are earning their reps and getting those reps, great. And then, when we get to competition and we get to preseason, I promise you, maybe us, but somebody's going to count reps and get a sense. And it won't be surprised if we, I don't know who the Cleveland answer to Elliott Shores Park is going to be, who's going to, take stats of training camp practices for all the quarterbacks, but I suspect somebody will.
Yeah.
And really keeps track of, how many snaps are these guys getting on a particular day, and how is that changing from day to day, and trying to read into that and getting a sense, trying to get a sense of if that is a tell for how this thing's going or not. And some of this may alternate. They may ultimately end up in a situation where a guy's getting a shot, but to my earlier point about being perfect, if Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders gets a shot with the first team, that you it's all there for you at that point. You've got your shot. You've got to make it count. And you've got to be impressive in those elements. So there's not enough reps to go around. Having 4 quarterbacks is genuinely challenging the way the CBA works. So the meetings are going to be more important, and individual work is going to be more important. But those guys are going to have to make the most of those opportunities. And I'm hoping, as I've already said, I hate the pace of NFL practices. I'm hoping they go faster. I'm hoping they try to get more reps to try to help stave off some of these elements, because you've only got so much time in a given day, in a given week, in a given training camp or whatever. You should be, as this team's going, trying to find a way to get every rep possible out of this. And I'll be curious to see if they internalize that element, if they try to have these quarterbacks basically drive the pace more. Yeah. That will be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Cause to his point, as he laid out about, and you just highlighted, if you're only going to get 1 rep at the beginning, it has to be perfect to earn 2, and so on and so forth. It certainly breeds the right kind of work, right? And but it also it's hard to envision the path for either of the rookies to get to starting week 1.
Oh, it's going to be, they're going to have to be unbelievable real fast.
You would have to blow people away, right? Like,
look, that's going to be difficult because it's always difficult. But we'll see. Like, somebody's going to try to say that somebody, made a statement at rookie camp. I'm telling you right now, nobody made any statement at rookie camp.
Sure.
It's not possible.
Right.
There aren't enough guys on the field.
Yeah.
I'm sure they lit up whatever Browns equipment guy is standing out there in coverage. But they did not light it up in rookie camp. Now I hope they are prepared. I hope they are able to internalize and digest what's being thrown at them. But I know it's going to happen. Now I at the same time, there are guys who could look good, positional players that could look good in shorts and stuff. in that capacity. Like had the Browns drafted Travis Hunter, would like when he inevitably shows up at Jacksonville's rookie camp, it would not surprise me if he blows people away with his ability. But the Browns don't really have that guy unless it's the running backs or maybe Harold Fannin. I don't think the quarterback's going to do. My question to you, would you rather have the Browns quarterback room or the Giants quarterback room?
The Browns.
That's interesting to me. Now, I think Jackson Dart, I really like the talent. I would rather have him of all those rookie guys. But if you're asking me, do I want Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston versus Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett? Ultimately, only one of those guys of the four has a chance to really do anything beyond being a short-term quarterback. And it may not be likely for Kenny Pickett, but again, you at least give yourself a chance. And with the Giants, they know where they're going. They know they're ultimately going to Dart. And if it works out, they're going to be in great shape and they're going to be better off than the Browns. But it is really interesting to be able to sort of look at the Browns situation. And even if you're sitting there going, I know they're probably going to almost certainly still going to end up drafting a quarterback next year. Yeah, there is an element of sort of intrigue with just sitting here with 3 swings and saying, maybe one of these guys can work. And maybe one of these guys can be pretty good. And even if they draft a quarterback next year, maybe one of these guys can ultimately be something for this team or be something that they can move for additional assets down the road.
Yeah, that was the other aspect of this is like, while it's hard to envision one of these guys getting there to start at week 1, you also have to somehow, and we've talked about this before, a lot of rookie minicamp, you talked about this, so I'm literally stealing this from you. Last year, I think that a lot of like rookie minicamp is teaching guys how we want to practice when we actually get to practice and how like important that is. So if this year it's about tempo and speed so we can get more reps in, then that has to be, implemented here from day 1 on Friday. But also because of the expectation that like you look at New York's quarterback room and eventually they'll get to Dart and that might be their answer, right? Well, you kind of look at the Browns quarterback room and you're like, well, there's a couple guys here that could be the answer, but the ultimate answer may be your selection in the first round next year. So you got to find out about these guys now. Like, so while it's hard to envision the path to starting early in the season or week 1 or whatever, you also have to kind of whittle away for that to happen, allow the room for that to happen if possible, if someone's willing to step into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, there aren't enough reps to go around. So this creates a challenge, both a challenge and an opportunity for the Browns to be really creative and potentially really smart with how they handle this thing. And it could make the team better. As a result, could make these quarterbacks better. But ultimately, I am more concerned with if it makes them better for if they do have to draft a quarterback next year, that it puts them in the best position to then guide that player to being what they need him to be. So it's a really interesting setup, suboptimal in a whole lot of ways. But again, it gives you a lot of creative freedom with how you want to approach this. So I'm hoping that the Browns are going, and I don't know that's going to be readily apparent to observers to go, oh man, they're trying this.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be one of those things where we learn about it later, or if one of these rookies is super successful, it's some Sunday countdown story of talking about how the Browns were able to sort of handle this in a way that sort of got the best out of them. That is genuinely a very interesting element to this that I'm hoping we get to learn about. And well, ultimately, first and foremost, I hope it works.
Yeah.
Because if the opposite could happen, it could be a train wreck and none of it works and they ultimately get themselves fired. But if it does work, us getting to sort of learn about why it worked and what it allowed them to succeed.
Yeah. You wonder about that, even their own, their own show, if they would, open some of that up.
Perhaps, they could do that. I don't know.
It's risky.
It's one of those
in a
things
way,
where I don't
too.
know. Because it's more narrative driven than anything else, but nevertheless, it could be a really good opportunity. I'll be curious to see if they try to do something like that.
Yeah. Because they changed the name from Building the Browns to Unleashed or whatever, right? So
and I don't, who knows if they'll rebrand it again or if it's going to stay Unleashed. I assume it will be Unleashed again, but and I'll be curious to see if Tommy Rees is sort of informed by his time in college and that type of setup, if that helps sort of give him some additional insight into what he might think is the best way to get these guys going. And he's a former quarterback. I think Bill Musgrave is too, although that was got to be in like the 30s. To sort of say, hey, this was really effective, and this might be a way to get these guys up and running faster. Yeah,
there's a lot at play here, certainly for the Browns as we prepare for rookie minicamp. All right, we're going to do one more video here tonight. This one was interesting. We go to our guy, Chris Sims, and although he did not have Dillon, Gabriel high in his rankings, he does talk about what he saw and why he thinks an NFL team would like him in this clip here.
They had Shedeur Sanders in that quarterback room, too. Tomato Paste asked about the Browns, who do.
Yeah.
I think Dillon Gabriel beats out Shedeur Sanders. To me, he's the most talented quarterback behind Ward from the draft. He is short. That's all I have heard you really say about him.
Yeah.
Could we hear a more detailed explanation of why you had him so low?
Right. I listen, there was things I liked about him. There is. I've talked about his arm is pretty damn strong. He's got a quick release. He's a good athlete. He definitely is. I can find him to be a little bit of a high-effort thrower sometimes when the ball has to go down the field, which means he needs space and area around him, and that's just not always there. And then I think there was also part of me that goes, he is small, and there was plays I felt like I looked at every game where I'd go, man, that guy's kind of open down the middle, or this guy's there, but I don't think he can see him, or he's not comfortable in the pocket, so he's going to kind of move or get the ball out of his hands real quick, where I want to go, like the big guy's going to stand there and push that ball down the field there, right? So those are things I just worried about with him. But I see the physical tools, but again, it's a guy it is 5'10". It's not like, oh my gosh, he's so fast, and oh my gosh, his arm's so strong, but yes, could he mess with Shedeur Sanders here and beat him out? Absolutely. I mean, he's been around some good offenses. He knows how to play quarterback in the pocket. He's very good that way. And I do think they'll push each other there, and you'll have a real duel between the two rookies there in Cleveland.
He feels kind of like, and I don't know why, he feels kind of like a Gardner Minshew-ish, right? Where there could be stretches where you're like, man, maybe he is the guy and can play to that level, but then there are physical limitations that ultimately cap his ceiling.
That's what we're going to see. We're going to see. And we're going to see, too, as if you played pretty small in college, you're going to be even smaller in the NFL. And we know how the pocket gets even more collapsed and claustrophobic in the NFL. That's something he's going to he's going to go, whoa, I played big-time football in the Big Ten. I know that. But, wow, things are a little different here sitting in this pocket in the NFL. And that's going to make him feel smaller and a little more nervous and get the ball out of his hands, too. So we'll see how he adjusts to that. Yeah. But there are things I like. And, hey, listen, the biggest fan of Dillon Gabriel is the guy we just talked about, my dad. So my dad would be one that would go, no, I like Dillon Gabriel. That's like his sleeper guy right there.
Oh, interesting.
And I think within this offense, right, this is a offense in Kevin Stefanski, kind of West Coast. They like to run the play action, bootlegs a lot, and do some of that. Dillon Gabriel is going to be very good at that stuff.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, bootlegs on the run, doing stuff like that. Hey, fake the run here, come out the back door, and you can run or make a throw down the field. He's pretty damn good in that department. He will be better than Shedeur in that department.
Well, hey, you just gave Drew Rosenhaus your dad's number. Would you give it to Tomato Paste so they could talk about their love of Dillon Gabriel
I don't know
together?
Tomato Paste enough. Sorry, I don't know him well enough. I know Drew Rosenhaus. I don't know this guy.
given the ability differences maybe in what you think of Dillon, what you think of Sheduer Sanders, you thought he was the number 2 quarterback in the class. Given where they drafted him, though, 3rd round for Gabriel, 5th round for Sanders, how do you think this all does play out? Who do you think beats who, and does it matter?
No,
in the beginning of the year, will it matter if one's 3 or 2 or 3?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. The thing that's, I think, fascinating about the whole thing is just like, you got 4 guys, right? And you got 2 rookies where you go, we'd like to get them a lot of work and see what they're going. But you got to also worry about, hey, Kenny Pickett could be our starter. I don't know. Maybe Joe Flacco is. So, like in a 7-on-7 period in OTAs, you could have 12, 14 plays. You got to split that up between 4 people, right? You're not doing justice to your young quarterbacks by like, hey, here's the last 2 plays of the period and here's the last 2 plays of this period, right? So I'm interested in how they divvy that up a little bit. But yeah, they're almost opposites. And Shedeur Sanders and bootlegs and stuff like that, that's not necessarily his game. But standing in the pocket, being big and strong and tough with people collapsing around him, that's where he does thrive, in my opinion. That's where he does have Dillon Gabriel beat in that department there. So I'll be interested, and I don't know how they favor him. I don't think there is a favorite here as you go forward. I really don't. I think it's one that's truly going to be like, let's just see who plays the best, who practices the best, handles the offense the best, and they're going to go from there. Yo, homies, what's up? Thanks for watching, Chris.
Interesting stuff there, I think, on this whole thing. When you talk about those 2, he talks about how he could give Sanders a run for his money as far as the competition goes. Do you think that, like, and how he might be better at some of the things that Stefanski wants to do? And obviously he was Stefanski's guy first and foremost, right? Like there's a relationship fostered there that we were unaware of, right? You know what I mean? That has been happening for some time. And, you know, being a fan of Stefanski, I want that guy, the guy that he handpicked to work. But at the same time, I just wonder if at some point, like, is Shedeur just is it going to be overly apparent in practice with the few opportunities that they get? And once again, it's brought up again, how you going to divide up these these reps? It's an issue. And they have to have a plan, but is it going to be overly apparent that Shedeur is just the more talented and more, player and more NFL ready player? Maybe.
I doubt it. I have to go through and do the whole Shedeur thing again for the review. I did Dillon Gabriel, and knowing what I know about Shedeur versus Gabriel, there are things that I think Shedeur could steal from Dillon Gabriel. The biggest thing, Dillon Gabriel is old, he's overaged and undersized. Those things are there. Those are real. For the most part, he's pretty good at everything else. My biggest issue with Dillon Gabriel is he just doesn't have necessarily anything that, he doesn't have anything that necessarily stands out about him being special.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the people who were so stunned continue to be stunned about Dillon Gabriel being picked where he was, remain that way. But the thing I will be very curious to see if Shedeur can learn, borrow, whatever, whether it's from Gabriel or just on his own. Dillon Gabriel consistently has answers to problems. Dillon Gabriel does not have negative plays. Don't get me wrong. He has taken some sacks, but whether it's he knows where the ball's got to, he knows where to get the ball out. He knows where it's got to go. He's really good at diagnosing and attacking the blitz. He's got he's really good at sort of understanding generalized pressure in the pocket and how to deal with it without panicking, without bailing from what is otherwise a clean pocket, making the right step, having enough athleticism where you can sort of corner in a way that limits an athletic pass rusher, which includes Abdul Carter. He just gets a lot of things right, and to me, 1,000% a testament to the fact he started 63 games. He looks like a guy who's played a ton of football. But even in coverage, he just doesn't. I think I saw one interception against Michigan State over 2 years where I thought, no, he just got that coverage wrong. He thought this guy was going to sit on the outside receiver, and he dropped back and was able to corral the interception. He has the answers. Now, how far is that ultimately going to get him? I'm not sure. Based on the data, he could be a superstar. Like, it's there. You can see the path where Dillon Gabriel is a franchise quarterback. But do I think that's realistic? I think it's far more likely that he's a backup. Maybe he's a spot starter. Maybe he can get to that Brock Purdy level. But you watch him and you're just like, he knows he has all the answers to the test over and over and over. And there are things that are going to drive him insane. Pressure up the middle, being able to muddy the pocket and take away his vision is going to be a problem. But even then, like, the stuff, one of the criticisms I sort of heard about him through the draft process, and Chris Sims touched on it a little bit, because there are some situations where you can't always see the middle of the field, but he carved up the middle of the field by and large this past season at Oregon. He did more in the middle of the field than he did anywhere else.
Interesting.
So there are things, and I know there are things that Shedeur does better than Dillon Gabriel. I know he's got a wider array of throws he can make, even though I think Dillon Gabriel has a stronger arm. But I will be curious to see if Shedeur can sort of pick up on the answers that Dillon Gabriel has picked up, because Dillon Gabriel stays out of negative plays, and I don't care what team you're on. Coaches hate negative plays.
Yeah.
And can Shedeur figure that part out? Can he avoid those negative plays and then do more of the things that he does that are really positive? He can be a playmaker. He can do a whole bunch of other things. And obviously, Dillon Gabriel's a much better athlete than Shedeur Sanders. He legitimately can make plays with his legs in a way that Sanders just cannot. So look, I've said all along, Dillon Gabriel is not my taste of quarterback.
Right.
And especially when you watch his Oklahoma tape, you're like sitting there and you want him to be Baker Mayfield. He's not Baker Mayfield.
No.
He's a better runner than Baker Mayfield, but he's not that guy. But it's, you watch him and you're just like, okay, like there's a lot of these where you're just like, wow, that was a pretty good throw. I think the biggest thing I came away with, especially with his Oregon tape, he doesn't have a whole lot of big time throws. And the reason he doesn't have a lot of big time throws, because he doesn't need them. He just gets it right and just throws it where it's supposed to go to a guy who's open and makes the play. It makes the right play as opposed to making the spectacular play. It's not to say he can't, because he certainly has some of those in his arsenal. But overall, you're just like, he just gets it correct. And from that standpoint, I completely understand why Kevin Stefanski's like, that's him. That's the guy I want. So I know Kevin Stefanski has said we don't see the height in his game tape being an issue. I largely agree with that. I still don't agree with the assessment that if he was 6'3", he'd been the second pick in the draft. I cannot get there. He's a good quarterback. I do not see superstar, even if the data does. But I'm hoping he proves me wrong, because I was genuinely impressed. That was the biggest thing I came away with Dillon Gabriel that impressed me, is just the number of ways he could answer situations and get it right, and just completely render the defense powerless to stop him.
Incredibly interesting. It's going to be an intriguing offseason, and the Browns are going to be talked about a lot on a national scale. So keep it locked at the OBR as we have you covered wall to wall on everything. Next week's schedule release on Wednesday night, 8 p.m. after OBR Weekly. So keep it locked for that special edition. I'll be back on Thursday for All Eyes on Cleveland. Do you have any parting words for us tonight, Pete?
Nope, just keep reading along. I'll have we're almost there on the draft picks, and then I'll see about doing a couple of the undrafted rookies if I can find enough enough to watch on them because there are some guys that I do believe had genuine talent of the guy the Browns signed. So if I can find enough to make another review, I will do that.
The comprehensive draft review from Pete, outstanding. I suggest you go read it at the OBR. It's detailed. It's a deep dive into everything you need to know about the prospect and your newest Cleveland Browns. Thank you for watching the React. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. Have a wonderful evening. We are out.